I was spending my summers up in Alaska. Why Barb and I didn't date very often in San Francisco until because I was gone quite some time. But anyway,
So you'd said that you were gone
I
in
was-
the summers and then there in the winters?
I was there in the winters, yes. So really, we didn't date that much. And when I got back from Alaska, the last trip, why she had gone to Minnesota to go to nurses training, and I got a job through friends in Los Angeles to maintain National Guard aircraft.
So helicopters?
Helicopters, yeah. As I got out of service, I had a small airplane at the time, which I used to fly around. Anyway, while they were processing my paperwork for me to work in Los Angeles for the National Guard as a civilian, I happened to fly into this little airport, San Fernando Valley Airport, which had the headquarters at that time for a helicopter operation that worked overseas. And I started talking to people there, and they talked me into, they were looking for someone with my capabilities to take over the maintenance of a new operation they were setting up in Borneo. And being a young, adventurous guy, I decided to take the job. So I never really went to work for the people in Los Angeles, and then I took the job overseas and went home and saw my folks and told them where I was going, and in Indiana, and stopped by Minnesota where Barbara was going to nurses school, and told her where I was going and what have you, and we spent a few days together, and somehow she convinced me that it was time for me to propose.
It was me, you know.
And we must have had 6 dates or so before that, so I don't know, maybe that many. So anyway, then I met her folks and what have you, and then I went back to California, and we went overseas. We had a
So at that point you were engaged?
yeah, yeah, we were engaged.
Okay.
Right. And we took a helicopter apart, put it on a DC-4 at that time, 4-engine airplane, and some other cargo for Formosa, and flew across the Pacific and landed we took off at Oakland and landed in Hawaii, and then Guam, and then Manila, and then we ended up unloaded the helicopter in a small island called Labuan, just off the coast of Borneo. It was the only place that had an airstrip long enough. It was an old military strip left over from the Second World War.
And what kind of helicopter was it?
It was a Bell 47, and we assembled the 47 there, and the helicopter, and flew it across the short distance over the South China Sea until we got to Brunei, and then worked our way down to Sarawak, Borneo, is where I worked for them sometime. And I worked in Borneo it was quite a shock going from a little Indiana farm boy to getting out of the helicopter, and kind of was told to left to guard the helicopter from the natives. They were all very short people, highly tattooed, with a little loincloth and a long jungle knife on them. So they were intimidating, even though I was quite a bit taller than them. Anyway, we worked, lived in grass shacks on the riverbanks, and would fly out to a converted, like a destroyer. It was an English ship. And I can't remember the name of what they called it, but it was about the size of a destroyer. We built a little deck on the back, so we would every day take food out and bring records back, and they were doing seismic work off the coast of Borneo for oil. And,
So that was not military though?
no, that was all civilian,
Civilian,
yeah, all
okay.
civilian, yeah. And so once a month I'd get back into, we would get back into the oil town. Otherwise, I was pretty much by myself out in the, I and another fellow Dutchman lived out in the jungle and river mouse for about a year. And had a few incidences. Once as we were ferrying back to the main oil town, and we had some mechanical difficulties with the helicopter, and landed on the beach. And realizing the tide was going to come in, why we got as close to the jungle as we could, and tied the helicopter off the trees so that when the tide came in, it wouldn't float away.
So it had buoys on it?
Yeah, it had floats on it, so it would float. The only trouble is it was all jungle and we couldn't land on land. The beach was the only available spot. And after diagnosing the helicopter and figuring out what was wrong, it was an exhaust valve that was bad in one of the cylinders. And so I knew they by radio they knew we were coming in that day, and when we wouldn't show up, they would send a search plane out. So I wrote a message in the sand, exhaust valve, because my counterparts back in the main base would know exactly what the problem was. Well, my counterparts weren't exactly real gleeful to see a young kid like me have as much authority as I did over there. So, and sure enough, by a couple hours away, this English seaplane came flying over and saw my message and went back. Well, the way the helicopter engine is, the engines are put together, the valves are installed in the cylinders, and when normally you install a cylinder which has got the valves already installed in, and that's not a real complicated job. Well, my friends back at the main base loaded up the seaplane with the part I needed. No tools, just the part, just the one exhaust valve, and a ham sandwich, and came flying back over and tossed him out the window and landed on the beach. So there I was with my one exhaust valve and a screwdriver and a crescent wrench, and not hardly any tools, and it was going to get dark. So anyway, I got the engine book back together and we got it running, and we got it back into town. And first thing I told my friends that sent me that, I said, this place isn't big enough for the both of us. So and so the management evaluated the situation, and I stayed and they went. So that was pretty bad what they did to me. So anyway, after accomplishing that, they were having great difficulties in East Pakistan at the time. We were working for Standard Oil in New Jersey and East Pakistan in oil exploration. And so they sent me to East Pakistan to
So how long were you in Borneo?
I was really only in Borneo maybe about 13 months, something
Okay.
like that, yeah.
So that would have been what year in school for you, Mom? Would that have been, when you guys got engaged, was that at the beginning of school, or was it partway through?
That would,
What,
So when you said you guys, when you came back before you left,
mhm.
you got engaged.
She might have started her second year, but she was probably still in her first year,
Okay.
because I was overseas for 2 years, a little over 2 years before I came back, and we got married. And because I had a 3-year contract, so I had to go back overseas again. And we got married about 6 months before my contract was up.
So that would have been where, because you said you had to be in your senior year to get married.
yeah.
So
Was
that
it-
was the January of your senior year? Was it typical like September through May or June, the school year?
Except, well, nursing school was year-round.
Oh, okay.
You'd get vacations, but not the summer off like,
So when would it start? Would it have started in the fall, or do you remember?
yeah,
Started in the fall, so every fall would have been a new year. So you would have been a couple months into your senior year when you got
Mhm.
married.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
yeah.
got married in January.
Right.
Yeah, we got engaged in her first year of school,
Right.
and then I went overseas for 2 years, and we come back and got married when she was about in January when she was about halfway through her last
Senior.
year, senior year. yeah.
Okay. And that's, you came back after Borneo and Pakistan.
No, I was working in Pakistan, but I took my first leave when I was in Pakistan,
Got it.
and it was, and it's kind of a wonder that we even worked that out, because in Pakistan at that time it was one of the poorest countries in the world, and for instance, if you wrote a letter and sent it home, or if I would send a letter to Barbara, I would take it to the post office and buy the stamp, and they would give me the stamp and give me my change, and I would count the change, and it was always wrong, and we'd get that straightened out. Then I'd put the stamp on the letter and make them cancel it in front of me, otherwise they'd take the stamp off and sell it to somebody else. So communications just written communications was slow and difficult, and if we placed a phone call, and we could call, that we would probably take 3 to 4 hours to get through to the United States when you wanted to make a phone call. So it was a little different than it is now. So, but anyway, I came home when I was halfway. I was in Pakistan, and we got married, and I went back overseas, and then I met her in Hong Kong when she graduated from school. So after she graduated, she flew over to Hong Kong, and we met there, and went back to East Pakistan, and then I worked between Calcutta, India, and Pakistan until my contract was up. Well, my contract was up, but I got transferred to. My contract wasn't up. Pardon me. I got transferred to. First, I got orders to go to Africa, to Rhodesia, and before I got going to Rhodesia, I got transferred to Minneapolis, Minnesota, to oversee a project, that experimental balloon project that the company had going on, and my wife was very disappointed.
Yeah, weren't we in India then?
Yeah, we were working in India then. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved India, and then he takes me back to where I grew up.
Now, go back to the wedding. Mom,
What?
tell me about the wedding.
The wedding? You tell him, I don't remember too much.
Anyway, it was kind of a shock to my family that we were getting married, because they didn't know I really had a girlfriend. But coming from a very large family, and one of my brothers worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad, so he arranged for the whole family to come to Minnesota via train, and be at my wedding. Yeah, it was great.
So how many people?
Well, just his family must have been 20.
Right.
Yeah. So we may have dominated. Yeah, just I think
Where was it?
in Rosemont, Minnesota. Yeah,
Okay.
Little town, and just
In a church?
church. Yeah.
Is the church still there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's-
I'm sure it is still there. Maybe not, but a little Lutheran church. We were both Lutherans. Me, I was German Lutheran, and you were Missouri, you were?
Yep. So anyway, soon after I got married, just to give you an idea, things were a little different then. I got married, and then we got married, and she had to finish school. So I had to fly back to my job in East Pakistan, and I made reservations on, I can't remember, American Airlines to New York and TWA, Transworld Airlines to Rome, and then the British Overseas Airlines to India, and then Pakistan Airlines. Anyway, in the process way, I got to Rome okay, and when I was to transfer over to British Airlines way, they never heard of me. So, but at that time, it was their responsibility. I was ticketed, so they put me up in the city of Rome in a nice hotel and fed me until they could get me out of there. So
That's what it should be.
that's the way it should be. It should always be that way, even.
Right.
But so I had a great time in Rome. Sit, I just when I learned about wine, you could sit down to breakfast and they'd bring you a carafe of wine just to start out your day. But yeah. Anyway, when she graduated, we met in Hong Kong and went to India, and she was a little mesmerized by things. It was kind of hard to get used to seeing people at night if you took a cab, sleeping on the sidewalks and in the doorways and that sort of thing. We would occasionally go to the field operations via train, and the India train station had thousands of refugees sleeping on the floor in the station at night for protection, and they had painted walkways where they weren't allowed to sleep. Otherwise, there was a mass of humanity over the whole concrete aprons and just these narrow pathways that they would keep clear for the passengers to embark and disembark the trains. So, and they basically, their Calcutta or India is mostly Hindu and East Pakistan is Muslim. So they were kind of at odds with each other and still are, I think, today over Kashmir and areas. But so we had a different culture in the two towns, two places we worked. India was the Hindu. The cows are sacred, so the cows wander the street in the financial area district and so on. And being a very poor nation, where they cows get fed whatever, and they would pick the cow dung up off the streets and plaster it on the side of a building to dry. And then when it dried enough to fall off, well, then we would use it for fire, make tea and stuff like that. So in the evening, the whole town had this gray cloud. It was like a little low fog bank of burning cow dung over the city, which made it a little different experience. And it was interesting. It was during the when America was doing a lot of great things for the foreigners back then. I remember we were told by the Indian government that we would deliver care packages, and to when they had some kind of flood or something, the U.S. and the foreign countries would help them out. They would supply them with things. So when I really got to know about politics is when we had all these care packages. We had to, Nehru was the Prime Minister of India at that time, and we had to paint his name out, or put from U.S., paint U.S. out and put from Nehru on the packages. And so the only, when I really learned there really was a God was when they opened the care packages and it had pork in it, which was a very negative forbidden meat in Hindu. So it was an interesting time, and it was very common to have things stolen if you're easy. But one thing nice about India was they had a thieves' market, so if you had something stolen, you could go back and buy it back.
Mark,
Back.
tell them about the little bigger girl.
They had a marketplace that we would buy things in. Well, we had a little beggar guy that was on the street near us, and he would sell oranges and whatever, you know, to us. And Barb would go down and say she would buy a dozen oranges. And she'd get home and she'd have maybe 6 or 8 oranges in the bag. And so she finally figured out that she would have to count the oranges as he counted them, and they would skip numbers, and finally she learned to come home with the right number of oranges. Well, we got to kind of befriend him because he was just a cute little guy out scraping, you know, trying to make a buck to live on. So they had this market. It was kind of a nice market. They had stalls, and it was an upgrade from the rest of the town. So, but to go in, you're supposed to have a market boy, a guy that would take you and show you around. Well, we decided that we'd take this kid in. This is our market boy. Well, he was not in the union. He caused a riot. And we said, well, he stays or we go. Well, they wanted our business, but they sure didn't want him. But we finally got through the place with him, but he just about got us thrown out a few times. But it was a fun experience. He was just big eyes all over the place. So it was kind of fun doing, messing with our class thing situation over there.
Well, the little beggar girl.
Oh, okay. I was, one night I worked at the airport, and it was a nice, pleasant evening, and I told Barbara, so she came out for some reason to the airport, and I said, well, why don't we walk back? We'll see some of the local markets and see how far we can walk. Well, we were walking along, and a little beggar girl, just a little tiny girl, was begging as they always did. Well, it wasn't always a good thing to give them money because of what it encouraged and what have you, because these beggar people were owned by kind of like a pimp. They would steal babies and disform them so that they'd make good beggars. So they really all worked for this one guy. But this girl was just kept going along, you know, just begging all the way. And it was starting to get dark, and like I started to kind of be concerned about her safety because she was a long way from where she originally picked us up or started begging. So I reached in my pocket and gave her a coin, and she went off, and it was fine. Well, pretty soon, here they come. She and a whole group of people. I had given her a Pakistani Anna instead of an Indian Anna, and they are at odds with it, and Pakistani money was just taboo in India, and I was just about started a riot. And luckily, some local, you know, kind of cab came along that rescued us and got us out of there. But it was just a strange place.
She was screaming, Pakistani Anna, Pakistani Anna. And we were really scared. And I don't know what would have happened to us if that taxi hadn't come along.
Yeah. And
So how much did you guys communicate when you were overseas and Mom was back in Minnesota?
I would try to write her. I probably wrote her once a week,
And that would all come through?
yeah, pretty much. You know, it took a little while. Mail wasn't too bad because we used airmail at that time, and we probably, if you go through our stuff when we're gone, you'll find these real thin little envelopes that are airmail. Airmail. You actually write on the inside of it and fold it up and paste it down as
Low weight.
yeah, real low weight, simple thing. But really, we were about 6 months away from supplies if we ordered something from the United States or something like that. So, and in parts, I always had to figure 6 months ahead on what I needed for helicopter maintenance. And there was a lot of, you know, at that time we weren't smart enough to be scared, so we were okay, you know, for instance.
So then you got back to Minnesota?
What?
Then you got back to Minnesota?
Okay, yeah. Basically, I got transferred back to Minnesota, and
And you weren't excited about that, Mom?
yeah.
You
No.
liked being overseas.
Well,
India.
at that point, we were in India, and I really liked India.
Why'd you like India?
There was interesting shopping, but the people were interesting, and I was too dumb to be, or too naive, let's say, to be scared, which, you know, I should have been. Calcutta wasn't a safe place to be at all. And I took somebody out sightseeing. Somebody, wasn't she from
She was,
Germany?
yeah, she was from the east side of Germany, the communist side of Germany.
So she'd seen a lot of terrible things there. But anyway, I took her out, and then I brought her up to our apartment, and she pretty near shaking, and her eyes were watering, and she said, she scared me to death. Well, you know, and to me it was just a walk in the park. Oh, but she was.
You know, if you're not smart enough to be afraid of something, you're just used to life, and things didn't bother you very much. But there were certain dangers there. We were, of course, the Cold War was still going on with Russia at that time, and some of the interesting things were the press. We thought we had freedom of press here, but India's got real freedom of press. When I remember, I think it was in their version of Time magazine, Russia had put up the first satellite, Sputnik, and the country was all shook up, you know, and they quoted some congressman in Washington that says, well, if they put them up, we could shoot them down. So, not thinking that if you couldn't get the satellite out, how are you going to get the bullet up there, you know? All kinds of things. And you'd read, you know, comical things in the paper, like the police found a dismembered body in a burlap bag in the Ganges River, and they suspect foul play.
that we laughed about that for weeks.
Yeah, just a suspicion. Okay, so then when you got back to Minnesota,
Okay,
what happened there?
well, what happened is that I finished
What year would this be?
58
And you guys got married
and 57.
57, okay.
Probably it was the latter part of 57 really when I went back to because she wasn't overseas very long. She was with me, and the deal was then in 50. This was not long after the war, and if remember right, we ended up using the atomic bomb on Japan. And it so happened that this company in Minnesota, they had large balloons that they used to tether the atomic weapons at altitude to see what the test results were if they set them up at 1,000 feet, 5,000 feet, or whatever. Well, we were going to use the same technology, balloon technology, to install take a generator into the back uninhabited part of New Guinea Islands. There was a company that wanted to mine aluminum back there, and aluminum is processing is a high energy thing, and there was of course no energy there, so they had to build a power plant back in there, and the contractors for whoever would move the smallest piece, the biggest piece on the generator that they couldn't dismantle it, to get it so many miles inland to this river, and it was cost so much money to build a road, it cost so much money to do this, but if whoever could do it, the cheapest got the job. So we were looking at a balloon technology that would lift the generator, all but maybe a couple 100 pounds of it, and then hook the helicopter to the balloon, and fill the balloon with helium, and then the helicopter really only be carrying a couple 100 pounds, the helium would be carrying the rest. Interesting concept. The only problem was that all the helium in this world is controlled by the U.S. Navy. It's not available in the open market. So they release enough helium for blown up balloons and various things that people do, but you can't buy helium anyplace except in small quantities. Of course, we needed a large quantity, so helium was out. So the next, which is really a better lifting gas than helium is hydrogen. So,
Kind of flammable though.
well, we pulled a couple of situations just like the Hindenburg before we got it under control. Yeah, we burned up a few test balloons, In fact, nylon was just coming out at that time, and we had a nylon shroud over a plastic balloon, kind of like a football would be made, and static electricity between the nylon and the plastic would set off a static discharge and blow up the whole thing. And Barb had made nurses' uniforms out of the remnants of our burned up balloons. At that time, nylon was an interesting thing because it was a synthetic fabric that everybody loved, except the fact that it was very prone to static electricity, and the nurses would wear it and they would cling to their bodies and there'd be static discharges and stuff like that. So DuPont developed a chemical to treat the nylon with that would eliminate the static electricity. So that's when DuPont came out with that. Why then we treated the nylon with the anti-static material, and then put a small metal real thin coating of aluminum over the balloon, it's like a paint, and grounded that, so we got rid of our discharge, our problems. So the theory was that we could make hydrogen any place in the world, so it was not too difficult to manufacture, and we would get this done. Well, in the process, we come up with a lot of new technology, and which was used in various other in logging operations and various other things throughout the world. But when it was time for us to move on,